The morning fog rolled thick across the Virginia coastline as Commander Jake Morrison received the call that would change everything he thought he knew about warfare. His SEAL Team Alpha had been tasked with what seemed like a routine extraction mission. But nothing about this assignment would prove routine. Lena Gray's name had surfaced in intelligence reports 3 weeks earlier, a ghost in the system. She appeared to be a former military contractor with ties to several Black Ops programs that officially didn't exist. What made her dangerous wasn't just her training or her connections, but what she had stolen from a classified research facility in Nevada. The stolen item was a prototype weapon system called Project Silence, a revolutionary sniper rifle that used electromagnetic pulse technology to disable electronic systems within a 3-mile radius while delivering a precision shot. The weapon was worth more than most small nations' entire military budgets, and it had vanished along with its creator, Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had taken the identity of Lena Gray. Morrison studied the files as his team prepared for deployment. Lena Gray, born Elena Vasquez in Barcelona, had emigrated to the United States at age 12 with her physicist father. She had shown exceptional aptitude for mathematics and engineering, earning degrees from MIT and Caltech before disappearing into the world of defense contracting. Her official records ended 5 years ago, but intelligence suggested she had been working on advanced weapons systems for the Department of Defense. The mission briefing was clear: locate Lena Gray, recover the prototype weapon, and bring her in for questioning. Simple enough for a team that had successfully completed over 200 operations without a single failure. Morrison's confidence was absolute as they boarded the helicopter that would take them to the remote cabin in the Appalachian Mountains where their target was reportedly hiding. The intelligence pointed to a small, isolated structure nestled in a valley surrounded by dense forest. Satellite imagery showed a single access road, making it the perfect location for someone wanting to stay hidden. The plan was straightforward: approach under cover of darkness, surround the cabin, and take Gray into custody with minimal resistance expected from a lone scientist. As the helicopter descended toward their insertion point 5 miles from the target location, Morrison reviewed his team one final time. These were the best-trained soldiers in the world, veterans of conflicts in Afghanistan, Iraq, and other theaters that would never appear in any official records. Sergeant First Class Danny Chen was their sniper, capable of making impossible shots in any weather condition. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos handled explosives and tactical breaching. Petty Officer First Class Mike Thompson was their communications specialist and tech expert. Together, they represented the pinnacle of military training and experience. The hike through the mountain forest was routine. They moved silently through the darkness, their night vision equipment turning the black woods into a green-tinted landscape of trees and shadows. The cabin appeared exactly as the satellite images had shown, a modest structure with smoke rising from its chimney and a single light visible in what appeared to be the main room. Morrison positioned his team with military precision. Chen took up a sniper position on a ridge 300 yards from the cabin, his rifle trained on the front entrance. Santos and Thompson flanked the structure from the east and west, while Morrison prepared to approach from the south. Their communications were clear, their positions optimal, and their target apparently unaware of their presence. The first indication that something was wrong came when Thompson's voice crackled through their radio system. His electronic surveillance equipment was detecting unusual electromagnetic signatures coming from inside the cabin. The readings were unlike anything in their technical manuals, showing energy patterns that seemed to pulse in regular intervals like a heartbeat. Chen reported through his scope that he could see a figure moving inside the cabin, someone working at what appeared to be a large table or workbench. The person matched the general physical description of Lena Gray: average height, dark hair, and wearing what looked like a laboratory coat. Everything seemed to be proceeding according to plan. Morrison gave the signal to begin the final approach. This was the moment when their training and experience should have guaranteed success. They had surrounded and captured hundreds of targets using these same tactics, and there was no reason to expect this operation to be any different. The silence of the mountain night was broken only by the soft sound of their boots on fallen leaves and the distant call of an owl somewhere in the darkness. Morrison was within 50 yards of the cabin when he noticed that the electromagnetic readings on his equipment were intensifying. Whatever Lena Gray was doing inside that cabin was generating more energy with each passing minute. As he prepared to give the final command to move in, Morrison saw something that made him pause. The light in the cabin window wasn't coming from ordinary electric bulbs or even a fire in the fireplace. It was a strange, blue-white glow that seemed to pulse and flicker in patterns that hurt his eyes to look at directly. This wasn't the workshop of a hiding fugitive. It was something else entirely. The realization hit him just as Chen's voice came through the radio with an urgency that Morrison had never heard from his veteran sniper. The figure in the cabin wasn't working at a table or workbench. She was standing behind what appeared to be a highly advanced rifle mounted on a specialized platform. And according to Chen's calculations, it was aimed directly at their position. Morrison was reaching for his radio to call for immediate extraction when the night exploded into electric blue light that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The last thing he remembered before the world went completely silent was the impossible sight of a single muzzle flash that somehow illuminated the entire valley like lightning frozen in time. Commander Morrison awoke to absolute darkness and complete silence that seemed unnatural, as if the world itself had stopped breathing. His head pounded with a pain unlike anything he had experienced, and when he tried to activate his night vision equipment, nothing happened. The sophisticated electronic systems that had guided them through countless missions were completely dead. As his eyes gradually adjusted to the natural darkness, Morrison realized he was lying on the forest floor, exactly where he had been standing when the blue light erupted across the valley. His rifle lay beside him, its electronic scope and laser sight system as lifeless as everything else that had contained a circuit board. Even his digital watch had stopped, its display completely blank. The silence was broken by groaning sounds from different directions as his team members began to regain consciousness. Morrison tried his radio, knowing already that it wouldn't work, but hoping against hope that something had survived whatever had hit them. The only response was the empty static of a dead channel. Chen was the first to reach Morrison's position, moving with the careful precision of a soldier who suspected they might still be in immediate danger. The veteran sniper's face was pale, and his usually steady hands showed a slight tremor as he reported what he had seen through his scope in the moments before everything went dark. The figure in the cabin had indeed been Lena Gray, but she wasn't hiding or running as their intelligence had suggested. Instead, she had been waiting for them with a weapon unlike anything in any military arsenal. The rifle she had been using appeared to be a hybrid of conventional firearms technology and something that belonged more in a science fiction movie than a real battlefield. According to Chen's account, Lena Gray had not only known they were coming but had tracked their movement through the forest with impossible precision. She had waited until all 4 team members were in optimal positions around her cabin before taking her single shot. A shot that hadn't been aimed at any of them individually, but rather at something in the air above their position. Santos and Thompson arrived at the rallying point with similar stories of disorientation and equipment failure. Thompson, their technology specialist, was visibly shaken by the complete failure of every electronic device he carried. In his 15 years of military service, he had never encountered anything that could disable hardened military electronics so completely and instantaneously. As dawn broke over the mountain valley, the full scope of what had happened became clear. The electromagnetic pulse that had incapacitated their equipment extended far beyond their immediate area. Morrison could see that the small town visible in the distant valley was also dark, with no lights, no movement, and no signs of electrical activity anywhere within what appeared to be a radius of several miles. The cabin where Lena Gray had been waiting for them was now empty, but signs of her presence were everywhere. The workbench that Chen had observed through his scope was revealed to be a sophisticated laboratory setup with equipment that none of them could identify. Cables and electronic components were scattered across the floor, but like everything else in the valley, nothing that required electricity was functional. Morrison discovered something that made the situation even more disturbing. On the workbench was a detailed map of their approach route, marked with precise timings that indicated Gray had been tracking their movement from the moment they had left the helicopter insertion point. She had known not only that they were coming, but exactly when and how they would arrive. More unsettling still was a note left on the laboratory table, written in precise handwriting that seemed to mock their professional confidence. The message was brief but clear. Commander Morrison and SEAL Team Alpha, your reputation for tactical excellence is well deserved, but you have never encountered an opponent who could rewrite the rules of engagement in real time. Consider this a demonstration rather than an attack. The weapon you seek is now beyond your reach, as am I. Tell your superiors that some technologies should never have been developed. The note was signed simply LG, with a small drawing that Thompson recognized as a schematic symbol used in advanced electronics, specifically in electromagnetic field generation equipment. This wasn't the work of a thief or a rogue contractor. Lena Gray understood their systems better than they did, and she had used that knowledge to render the most elite military unit in the world completely powerless with a single, perfectly placed shot. As the team began their long walk back to civilization, Morrison tried to piece together what had actually happened in those final moments before the electromagnetic pulse. The physics of the situation seemed impossible, according to everything he knew about conventional weapons. A single rifle shot, no matter how advanced, shouldn't have been able to generate an electromagnetic field powerful enough to disable electronics across several square miles. The answer came from an unexpected source when they reached the edge of the affected area and Thompson's backup communications equipment finally came online. A message was waiting for them from Naval Intelligence, sent just hours after their communications had been lost. The message contained information that changed Morrison's understanding of who they had been sent to capture. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now calling herself Lena Gray, wasn't just a weapons designer who had stolen a prototype. She was the primary architect of a completely new class of warfare technology that combined traditional ballistics with directed energy weapons and electromagnetic field manipulation. The stolen prototype wasn't just a rifle. It was a delivery system for technology that could reshape the battlefield in ways that military strategists were only beginning to understand. The intelligence report revealed that Gray had been working on Project Silence for 3 years before she disappeared, but her research had progressed far beyond what her supervisors at the Department of Defense had realized. While they thought she was developing a conventional sniper rifle with electronic warfare capabilities, she had actually created something that blurred the line between weapon and scientific instrument. The single round she had fired wasn't a traditional bullet at all, but rather a sophisticated projectile that carried a miniaturized electromagnetic pulse generator. When the projectile reached the optimal altitude above their position, it had detonated in a carefully calculated pattern that created a cascading electromagnetic field effect across the entire valley. Morrison realized they had never been in physical danger from Gray's weapon. She could have killed all of them easily if that had been her intention. Instead, she had chosen to demonstrate her capabilities while sending a message that was impossible to ignore. She had turned the most advanced military unit in the world into confused soldiers stumbling through the woods with nothing but their basic training and non-electronic equipment. The walk back to their extraction point took them through the small town that had been affected by the electromagnetic pulse. The sight that greeted them there was unlike anything Morrison had seen in his military career. Every car, every electronic device, every piece of modern technology that the residents depended on had been rendered completely useless. Yet, there had been no casualties, no injuries, no violence of any kind. Lena Gray had effectively demonstrated that she possessed the ability to return any modern military force to 19th century technology levels without firing a shot at a human target. The implications were staggering. Traditional military tactics, electronic surveillance, guided missiles, communication systems, and virtually every aspect of contemporary warfare could be neutralized by someone who understood electromagnetic field manipulation at the level she had achieved. As they reached the extraction point, where a non-electronic vehicle was waiting to transport them back to base, Morrison understood that their mission had failed in ways that went far beyond simply losing their target. They had encountered something that challenged the fundamental assumptions about military technology and battlefield superiority that their entire careers had been built upon. The ride back to base was conducted in silence, each team member lost in thoughts about what they had experienced and what it might mean for the future of their profession. Morrison knew that the debriefing sessions would be extensive, and that their encounter with Lena Gray would be studied by military strategists and weapons researchers for years to come. But one question remained unanswered as they headed back to report their failure. Where was Lena Gray now? And what did she plan to do with technology that could change the balance of power in conflicts around the world? The Pentagon briefing room fell silent as Commander Morrison finished his report. General Patricia Hayes, head of Special Operations Command, stared at the classified documents spread across the conference table, each page detailing the impossible encounter that had left SEAL Team Alpha walking home through the Virginia mountains like survivors of a different era. 3 days had passed since the electromagnetic pulse had crippled their mission, and in that time, intelligence agencies across the government had been working around the clock to understand who Lena Gray really was and what her technology meant for national security. What they discovered painted a picture of a brilliant scientist whose motivations went far deeper than anyone had initially suspected. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been born in Barcelona to a family of physicists and engineers who had fled Spain during the political upheavals of the 1972. Her father, Dr. Carlos Vasquez, had been working on electromagnetic field research when the family moved to the United States. Elena had grown up surrounded by advanced scientific concepts and had shown remarkable aptitude for understanding complex mathematical relationships from an early age. Her academic record was extraordinary. By age 16, she was enrolled in advanced physics courses at MIT. By 22, she had completed dual doctorate degrees in electrical engineering and theoretical physics. Her dissertation on electromagnetic field manipulation had been immediately classified by the Department of Defense and had led to her recruitment into the most secretive weapons development programs in the country. The intelligence report revealed that Elena Vasquez had spent 5 years working on Project Silence, but her research had uncovered possibilities that her supervisors had not anticipated. While the Department of Defense wanted a weapon that could disable enemy electronics, Elena had discovered that the same technology could be used to create sustainable electromagnetic fields that could power communities without traditional electrical infrastructure. The breakthrough that had led to her disappearance came when she realized that her electromagnetic field technology could revolutionize not just warfare, but entire economies. Communities that had been isolated due to lack of electrical infrastructure could suddenly have access to power generation systems that were completely independent of traditional energy sources. Developing nations could leapfrog decades of infrastructure development. But Elena had also discovered something that terrified her about the military applications of her work. The same technology that could provide clean energy could also be weaponized to create electromagnetic pulse weapons capable of disabling the electrical infrastructure of entire cities or even countries. In the wrong hands, her research could send modern civilization back to the pre-industrial age. General Hayes reviewed the psychological profile that military psychiatrists had compiled based on Elena's academic work and military service records. Far from being a simple thief or a rogue contractor, Elena Vasquez had taken on the identity of Lena Gray because she believed the technology she had developed was too dangerous to remain under military control. The encounter with SEAL Team Alpha had been carefully planned to send a message to the highest levels of government. Elena hadn't disappeared to sell her technology to foreign powers or terrorist organizations. She had vanished because she intended to ensure that her discoveries would be used to help rather than harm humanity. Morrison learned that the electromagnetic pulse that had disabled his team's equipment had been precisely calibrated to cause no permanent damage to either people or infrastructure. Elena could have created a field powerful enough to stop human hearts or cause permanent brain damage, but she had chosen to demonstrate restraint even while proving her capabilities. Intelligence agencies had been tracking unusual energy signatures around the world in the weeks since Elena's disappearance. These signatures suggested that she was not working alone, but had connected with a network of scientists and engineers who shared her concerns about the militarization of advanced technology. The first confirmed sighting of Elena after the Virginia incident came from a refugee camp in Somalia, where aid workers reported that a mysterious woman had arrived with equipment that provided reliable electrical power for the entire facility. Medical equipment that hadn't functioned in months was suddenly operational, allowing doctors to perform life-saving surgeries and maintain vaccine refrigeration systems. Similar reports began arriving from remote villages in Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Colombia. In each case, communities that had never had access to reliable electricity suddenly found themselves with power systems that seemed to operate without any visible fuel source or connection to traditional electrical grids. The pattern was clear to intelligence analysts. Lena Vasquez was using her electromagnetic field technology to provide electrical power to some of the most underserved communities in the world. She wasn't selling her technology for profit or using it as a weapon against major powers. Instead, she was demonstrating its potential to address humanitarian crises and economic inequality. General Hayes faced a dilemma that no military manual had prepared her for. Lena Vasquez possessed technology that could revolutionize both warfare and civilian life, but she was using it in ways that made traditional military response impossible. How do you capture someone who is providing life-saving medical power to refugee camps and isolated villages? The answer came from an unexpected source when Lena herself made contact with the Pentagon through encrypted communications channels. Her message was direct and challenging. She proposed a meeting to discuss the future of electromagnetic field technology and its applications for both military and civilian purposes. The meeting took place at a neutral location, a research facility in Switzerland that was operated by the International Committee of the Red Cross. Lena arrived with a small team of scientists and engineers from around the world, each of whom had been working on applications of electromagnetic technology for humanitarian purposes. Morrison was part of the military delegation that traveled to Switzerland, partly because of his unique experience with Lena's capabilities, and partly because military planners wanted his assessment of the security implications of her proposals. What he encountered was unlike any negotiation scenario he had been trained for. Lena Vasquez no longer resembled the fugitive scientist who had disappeared from the Nevada research facility. She spoke with the confidence of someone who had discovered solutions to problems that governments and international organizations had struggled with for decades. Her team had developed portable power generation systems that could provide electricity for hospitals, schools, and water purification systems in areas where traditional infrastructure was impossible to maintain. The demonstration that Lena provided for the international delegation was both impressive and disturbing from a military perspective. Using equipment that could be transported in a standard cargo container, her team generated enough clean electricity to power a facility the size of a small hospital. The technology produced no emissions, required no fuel, and could operate continuously for years with minimal maintenance. But Elena's most important revelation came when she explained why she had chosen to demonstrate her capabilities against SEAL Team Alpha. She had known that military planners would never take seriously the humanitarian applications of her technology unless they first understood its potential as a weapon. The electromagnetic pulse that had disabled Morrison's team was proof that she possessed the ability to level the technological playing field against any military force. Elena's proposal was revolutionary in its scope and implications. She offered to share her electromagnetic technology with an international consortium that would ensure its use for humanitarian purposes while preventing its militarization by any single nation. In exchange, she demanded that all military applications of the technology be permanently classified and that research be redirected toward civilian uses. The negotiations that followed were complex and involved representatives from dozens of countries and international organizations. Lena had effectively created a situation where her technology was too valuable to ignore and too dangerous to allow unrestricted military development. Morrison watched Lena during the discussions and began to understand why she had been so successful in evading capture. She wasn't just a brilliant scientist. She was a strategic thinker who had anticipated every move that military and intelligence agencies might make against her. She had turned her disappearance into a demonstration of technological capabilities that forced the world to confront fundamental questions about the relationship between scientific advancement and human welfare. The final agreement reached in Switzerland established the Elena Vasquez Foundation for Electromagnetic Technology, an international organization dedicated to developing and deploying electromagnetic power systems for humanitarian purposes. Elena agreed to work with international oversight committees to ensure that her technology would be used to provide electricity to underserved communities around the world. In exchange, military research programs based on her work were placed under strict international monitoring, with agreements that prevented any single nation from developing electromagnetic weapons without unanimous approval from the Oversight Committee. Elena had effectively created a system that would allow her technology to help millions of people while preventing its use as a weapon of war. Morrison returned to his duties with SEAL Team Alpha with a new understanding of the complexities of modern conflict. Elena Vasquez had demonstrated that the most effective way to win a battle wasn't necessarily to defeat your opponents, but to change the rules of engagement entirely. She had taken technology that was intended for military purposes and transformed it into a tool for addressing some of humanity's most pressing problems. The woman who had once silenced an entire SEAL unit with a single electromagnetic pulse had become one of the most influential figures in international humanitarian efforts. Elena Vasquez, also known as Lena Gray, had proven that sometimes the most powerful weapon is the decision to use your capabilities to build rather than destroy. Her legacy continued to unfold as electromagnetic power systems began appearing in refugee camps, disaster zones, and isolated communities around the world. The technology that had once been classified as a military secret became the foundation for sustainable development projects that brought electricity, clean water, and medical capabilities to millions of people who had never had access to such resources. Morrison often wondered what might have happened if Elena had chosen to use her technology for personal gain, or if she had decided to auction her capabilities to the highest bidder. Instead, she had demonstrated that true power sometimes comes from the wisdom to know how not to use the weapons at your disposal. The single round that had silenced SEAL Team Alpha had ultimately become the shot heard around the world, not because of its destructive capabilities, but because of its creator's decision to use revolutionary technology to light up the darkness in some of the world's most forgotten places.